She spent over 20 years as a successful realtor and realtor coach, recipient of over 40 sales, leadership, and literary awards from the legendary Music Row in Nashville. This is The Power of Real Estate with Michelle Moore.
What's up? All right, we've got a great show for you. I'm just playing around. Producer Jimmy and I were talking right before he counted me down. He said, well, you could just say whatever you want. And he's like, what's happening? So I thought I'd just surprise him and be like, hey. All right, well, we got Realtor Kathy Carter in the studio again. She's here with us. She was here last week with the last episode. Now we're talking again about this divorce designation. So it's the RCS-D designation, Kathy. So, Kathy, share with us, what does that stand for?
So that stands for Real Estate Collaborative Specialist Divorce.
There you go. All right.
It's a mouthful.
I know it is. That's what, and I'm going to say that 3 times real fast.
No, we're not.
All right. So just to recap a little bit about you going to the class and what this designation is about, share with us kind of what this is all really about.
So after 10 years at the time of full-time real estate, top selling agent, all those good things, I'll go through this 2-day class and was sitting there with my mouth on the floor, literally. Just the things that were being taught about real estate and divorce and what we really need to educate our clients on. And there were just some things that came out of that class that I thought, wow, I'd never thought about really making sure my clients understood this. So that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about. I mean, typically in the real estate and the divorce world, what the mediator and or the real estate attorneys will have their client do is to get an appraisal on a property, and they'll just take the mortgage amount, deduct that, and the difference becomes the equity that they're really
going to split up in the divorce.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so that's been the typical way of dividing equity in a home, right? And so there were just some things in this class that were brought up about why that's not the way to do it, or the other things that you need to consider.
Okay, so the last episode we talked a little bit more, and you had a tip then, and so if you missed that and you haven't heard that episode, you can always go back and hear it. That's the first one that Kathy was on, but we're going to move forward and talk about tips 2 and 3. Okay, so we got 2 more tips 2 and 3. So Kathy, what is tip 2?
Okay, so tip 2, again, many times what will happen is one of the spouses, if this only pertains, let me just say this, 2 things. It only pertains if somebody is wanting to keep the house, okay? If you're already going to sell the house, then these things aren't as critical, although you do want to know about them, but they're not as critical. It's more if one of the spouses is trying to stay in the home. Some of the things that you need to consider about the equity, okay?
Yes, that's right.
So one of the things a lot of times is the staying spouse will be told that they have to refinance the home within, say, 6 months or a year. They're given a period of time. Also, what happens through that process is many times they're not told they have to get pre-qualified on the front end, right? So maybe the divorce goes through. They know in the divorce decree that they have to get refinanced in their own name, the staying spouse, but they didn't find out on the front end if they can qualify, number one. But the other thing that happens is even if they can qualify, what happens if that person loses their job and now they can't qualify after the divorce?
Yeah, because you could qualify today, but where are you going to be in 6 months?
That's
is
right.
What you're really saying.
Exactly.
And that's such a great point.
Yes. And so many times the outgoing spouse is told to quit claim the deed over to the staying spouse, right? So they quit claim the deed. Now they've given up complete ownership of the property, but yet they're still on the note many times, on the original note.
Yeah, because the home was not refinanced.
Because the home was not refinanced. Exactly. And so now they give up ownership. Now, whether they're paying the note or maybe the staying spouse is supposed to pay the note, the other thing to think about is if they don't pay, then the outgoing spouse's credit goes down the tubes with the staying spouse's credit. Follow? So if one person, the staying spouse, now is going to be responsible for paying the house payment, the outgoing spouse quit claim their ownership rights of the house. They have no ownership of the house anymore, but yet they still have financial obligation to the house.
That's what we call crazy, folks.
I know. But you know what? We actually kind of laugh like that. But Michelle,
it's every day.
It's every day. Unfortunately, it's every day. Every day mediators, and I'm not talking bad about them. It's not their everyday world in real estate.
That's right.
But they're told to quit claim their ownership right over to the house.
Yes.
But many times don't realize they're still financially responsible for the property.
That's right. And of course, 99.9% of people don't understand that. And one of the reasons why we're covering this is so as a real estate agent, if you've got some, let's say a couple that are getting divorced and they want you to come over, they want to know kind of a CMA, a comparative market analysis of what the home might be valued at now because they're trying to come up with some numbers for the divorce attorney, whatever the situation is, it would just be a good idea to go on ahead and start asking some of these questions, because if that staying spouse can't refinance, or if the leaving spouse who is going to be signing that quitclaim ends up hearing this and realizing, wait a minute, this is not a good idea for me to agree to this, they may go on ahead and list the home with you now. And so this is a great way to get the listing if that home truly should really be listed. Now, look, we're not talking about, advocating divorce here, right? This is not about advocating divorce. But this is about dealing with reality. People do get divorced. The divorce rates are, 50%, 55%. I think I read 55% it is now. At the end of the day, we do have to all deal with reality. And if that's what today's reality is, then we aren't doing our job. I felt like this was the best way to really do our job, is to make sure that you're equipped with the right information, like how real estate and divorce go hand in hand, so that you can then help to equip your potential sellers in this situation that are going through one of the most stressful times in their lives, which is divorce, right?
That's right. When I sat there, I think part of the reason I sat there is a friend of mine who had been married about 16 years and had gone through a divorce about a year prior to this. She was emailing me and just said, hey, I need a CMA. They had several kids and she was staying in the house, and she was a stay-at-home mom the whole time, right? So the outgoing spouse was going to pay the house payment and all. I left that class. I called her. I'm like, we got to go to coffee. I'm like, you've left yourself completely vulnerable. If he doesn't pay, you could literally one day be served a foreclosure notice. And she was like, that won't happen. If it does, blah, blah, blah. I swear the next year, a year later, that happened.
Oh, wow.
Literally, he had quit paying. She didn't know about it because he was paying the house note. She didn't know about it, and she got served foreclosure papers at home. So it's a big deal, and there's a lot of things that you have to consider if one person is wanting to keep the house. And that's not abnormal, especially with kids, because the kids are already going through so much with the divorce. One of the things that a lot of times they want to do is try to, let's keep the house at least the same.
Right.
Let's not uproot them from their home too.
Yeah.
And so it's not abnormal. So you just need to make sure that you educate yourself through it.
And that's truly an option right now for your clients. And so, all right, I know you have a third tip. So
the third tip,
number 3?
Just briefly is, again, we talked about typically appraisal minus mortgage equal equity, right? Well, if there's a staying spouse, before the divorce and before you negotiate, you need to make sure to have a home inspection on the house. Many times, surprises, even in our everyday real estate world, Michelle, you know this, when we have a home inspection, the surprises show up in the crawl space and then maybe attics, right? Where people don't go every day.
Yes.
People know what's going on typically on the inside of their home, but nobody gets in their crawl space, right? And so that's where surprises show up. Again, there was a couple of case studies that was talked about in the course where, one of the spouses stayed, they didn't do a home inspection. 3 to 4 years later, the kids graduate, they go to sell the home. New buyer has a home inspection, discovers that there's structural issues going on to the tune of about $40,000, right? So now the staying spouse that had been there for the last 4 years and had taken complete ownership of the property through the divorce, now they have to pay $40,000 in repairs before they can sell this home. So when they negotiated 4 years earlier, she didn't know this, right? She didn't know this. So she negotiated based on a complete different number than what she would have if they had a home inspection on the front end.
And she would have known, because odds are those issues were probably still present or already present by that point.
For sure.
All right. Well, that's great. That great information. Kathy Carter, Realtor Kathy Carter, is in the studio today with us, and I appreciate you coming in and sharing such valuable information and being a guest on the show. So thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Look, if you haven't gotten a copy of Selling Simplified, you can always go to realestatecoachingsimplified.com. That's an award-winning book that I wrote. It's been out about 4.5 years now and has done really well for us. But if you want to get your free copy, you can just go to realestatecoachingsimplified.com, sign up, and we'll send it to you. You can put it in your hands. All you got to do is pay for the shipping, which is $4.95, shipping and handling, and we'll get it sent out right to you. We're going to be here next week, so we'll see you then. And this is The Power of Real Estate with Michelle Moore.
Realtors, if you're ready to jumpstart your business, Michelle has your realtor coaching covered at realestatecoachingsimplified.com. Everything from coaching online teachings to in-person programs. Join us next time for The Power of Real Estate with Michelle Moore.